In the office today, Martha, we were talking about viewership and, audience for stuff we do.
Dangerous chat.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you have the record 27 million views on TikTok for your encounter with Gavin Newsom.
Is it really?
27 million.
That's at the LA fires.
Yeah. I mean, that was good, serious journalism. My record is something like 1 million, which actually was one of the original classics, and that was a lot for the time. If you Google, "I hate Iceland," this is what you hear. You only found out when you got to the airport. You didn't know in your hotel.
No, I hate Iceland!
So
I hate Iceland!
I mean, you get a lot of stag parties leaving Edinburgh at this time in the morning, a lot of drink taken in the early hours as well. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us.
That's about the volcano?
Yeah, that's when you remember the ash volcano, it grounded flights. I was at Edinburgh Airport and this guy came up and said, "I hate Iceland," twice. And it went viral, which was a kind of new thing at the time.
Yeah.
And he became "I hate Iceland" guy. A minor celebrity. He was doing.
Has he built a career from it?
He did, yeah. He was doing nightclub appearances in Falkirk and all the rest of it.
I hope you were going with him, getting your own slice of the pie, James.
I certainly basked in his reflected glory because it introduced me to a whole new young audience. My daughters were like, "Dad knows I hate Iceland guy."
You created him.
Yes.
I'm Martha Kellner in Los Angeles.
And I'm James Matthews in the Trump100 studio in Washington, D.C.
Donald Trump has signed the release of the Epstein files into law. So what does it mean and what happens next? And
Trump versus Mam Danny. It's on. The New York mayor-elect, the anti-Trump, is to meet the actual Trump. Big showdown. The Oval Office is the octagon for the day. It certainly is. We'll discuss that. But first, who is Trump saying should be hanged for seditious behaviour? Plenty to get into. Before we get into the Epstein files being signed into law, James, the president's been calling for Democratic representatives to be punished by death. Yeah. Now, I wake up a little later than you do in LA. I'm obviously behind on the day. And our producer for this podcast, it is produced, believe it or not, Gabriel, he sends us some ideas on potential talking topics. So the very first message I read this morning was, how about we talk about Trump calling for Democratic lawmakers to be executed? And I thought, yeah, that sounds like Thursday. Yeah, that day's been coming, hasn't it? Every chance it'll roll into Friday and beyond, Martha. I think it all began with a video released by 6 Democrat Congress people. They are telling US service members they should refuse to follow orders that are unlawful. All 6 in this video, they previously served in the military or had national security roles. They include Mark Kelly of Arizona, the same Mark Kelly whose wife Gabby Giffords, then a politician, was shot in the head.
I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow.
I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
and the intelligence community
who take risks each day
to keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
Like us. You all swore an oath
to protect and defend this Constitution.
And right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law
or our Constitution.
We know this is hard
and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
the Army,
or Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical.
And know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
the American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws,
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
Yeah, that video that they've made, it takes place against the background of what's happening in cities across America at the moment. Cities like Washington, D.C., where you are, LA, where I am, and Chicago. places where the Trump administration has been pursuing this tactic of sending the National Guard, so soldiers, onto the streets of cities under the pretense that they are lawless places on the brink of collapse and that law enforcement is overwhelmed and simply cannot cope. Now, Democrat officials, they argue that the president's deployments constitute an illegal overreach of federal power. They've sued to stop them, and many of these situations are caught up in the courts at the moment. This video has enraged Donald Trump, as I presume the Democrats who made it must have known that it would.
Yeah, the president hasn't been holding back on Truth Social. That's where he responded, called this video seditious behavior, punishable by death, in capital letters. In a separate post later, he wrote that they should be arrested and put on trial. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. We won't have a country anymore. An example, he wrote, must be set.
Seditious behaviour, by definition, is when people's conduct tends towards rebellion against an established order. I guess what wasn't established in this video is how exactly those members of the military are supposed to determine whether what they are being asked to do is unlawful, because that is difficult, for them to make that decision. Donald Trump clearly believes that what these Democratic politicians are asking military members to do is beyond the pale. He also reposted on Truth Social, lots of members of the public. He reposted one that said, "Hang them, George Washington would," and another which said that they should be frog marched out of their homes at 3:30 a.m. in front of Fox News cameras.
Yeah, the Democrats, Martha, have since come out to condemn what they say are disgusting and dangerous death threats from the president. Just a couple of months ago, I was reporting on the murder of Charlie Kirk, and, there is broad agreement across the spectrum that extreme political rhetoric was a contribution to his death. In a statement, the Democrats, they're saying the president should recant his violent rhetoric before he gets someone killed.
In the context of political violence towards both Republican and Democratic politicians and high-profile individuals, that sort of language from the president seemed difficult to excuse. But Speaker Mike Johnson did exactly that.
Speaker, how you doing? The president posted that Democrats who urge service members to not follow illegal orders should be punished. It should be seditious, conspiracy, and punishable by death. Do you have any response to that?
Look, I know the DOJ and the Pentagon are looking into the legality of all that, but what I can address is what everybody knows. That was wildly inappropriate. It is very dangerous. You have leading members of Congress telling troops to disobey orders. I think that's unprecedented in American history. And as the father of a young man who is, at the Naval Academy, going to be joining the service, I know young soldiers, airmen, sailors, they don't need that kind of nonsense from people in Congress. It is very dangerous.
Punishable by death.
I'm going to let others define what it is, but it's wildly inappropriate.
A few of those Democrats have since recorded videos of their own responding to Donald Trump's comments. Alyssa Slotkin, the representative from Michigan, said her allegiance was to the flag and not to the White House.
I would hope that people of all backgrounds, Democrat, Republican, Independent, would agree that threatening death for people you disagree with is beyond the pale of who we are as Americans. I love this country. It has given me everything. And I refuse to believe that this is the new normal. I refuse to believe that we're going to use fear and intimidation against people we disagree with. And I'm not going to be forced away from speaking up on behalf of my country.
I do think part of us by now does think, well, it's Donald Trump. He says a lot of things. He riffs on stuff, knockabout politics. But on this one, we're talking about the commander-in-chief. He's the man who gives the orders. He's also influencer-in-chief, and look no further than January the 6th. If you think of seditious behaviour, you don't have to look much further than the storming of the Capitol. And remember, Jan 6ers, they were given a presidential pardon. So in this febrile political environment, that kind of talk, I think it can be seen as incendiary. And of course, remember, during the unrest of 2020, Mark Esper, who was then Trump's defense secretary, he tells the story that Trump asked his chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff if he could shoot protesters, just shoot them in the legs or something, he reportedly said. Now, at that point, Trump was surrounded by people who were prepared to stand in his way. Those same people have long since moved on.
Yeah, and in their wake is Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. She was asked at the press briefing on Thursday about the president's social media posts.
Let's be clear about what the president is responding to, because many in this room want to talk about the president's response, but not what brought the president to responding in this way. You have sitting members of the United States Congress who conspired together to orchestrate a video message to members of the United States military, to active duty service members, to members of the national security apparatus, encouraging them to defy the president's lawful orders. The sanctity of our military rests on the chain of command. And if that chain of command is broken, it can lead to people getting killed. It can lead to chaos. And that's what these members of Congress who swore an oath to abide by the Constitution are essentially encouraging. We have 1.3 active duty service members in this country. And if they hear this radical message from sitting members of Congress, that could inspire chaos and it could incite violence and it certainly could disrupt the chain of command.
Caroline Leavitt at the lunchtime news conference, she was asked about something else, Martha, that we've discussed in the podcast. Asked about Donald Trump calling a female journalist piggy on Air Force One last Friday.
Look, the president is very frank and honest with everyone in this room. You've all seen it yourself. You've all experienced it yourselves. And I think it's one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president, because of his frankness. And he calls out fake news when he sees it. He gets frustrated with reporters when you lie about him, when you spread fake news about him and his administration. But he also is the most transparent president in history. And he gives all of you in this room, as you all know, unprecedented access. You are in the Oval Office almost every day asking the president questions. And so I think the president being frank and open and honest to your faces rather than hiding behind your backs is frankly a lot more respectful than what you saw in the last debate upstairs and didn't take your questions. So I think everyone in this room should appreciate the frankness and the openness that you get from President Trump on a near daily basis.
I was pretty horrified when I saw that video of what President Trump had said, and pretty disturbed to hear Caroline Leavitt chalking it up to him being frank and actually, reinforcing that idea that journalists should just be grateful to be there, never mind what names they're being called. And I heard Caroline Leavitt on a podcast earlier this week, in fact, New York Post podcast, and she was talking very nicely about balancing her career, this extraordinary career, with her family life at home, talking about putting her son to bed, about cooking for her family, preaching in inverted commas about Christian values. And I just wonder how all of that fits with supporting or certainly not condemning another woman being called piggy by the most powerful man in the world in such a public way. Because make no mistake, as soon as he does that, as soon as that clip goes public, thousands upon thousands of people will have rushed online to get a picture of that reporter. She was humiliated while trying to do her job. And, I think as journalists, we're all used to, when we're asking difficult questions, the people being asked those questions trying to intimidate us, trying to make us feel stupid. And Donald Trump does that more than anyone else. But for me, this goes beyond that. This felt different. It felt misogynistic and it felt abusive. And I would say it felt like, the president was plumbing new depths. But in all honesty, it didn't feel like a new low, because this is the same man who was caught on camera saying, grab her by the you-know-what. And his supporters didn't mind that. They still voted for it. And I suspect, like Caroline Leavitt, they won't mind this either. They'll say it is frankness, it's straight talking, even that it's funny. And I think that is a real problem. And let's not forget, Catherine Lucy, the woman asking the question, she was asking it about the Epstein files. This is the same week where we're talking about the abuse of young women over a period of decades, and about abuse which was allowed to continue for so long because of a justice system and a media, in part, which bended to the rich and powerful and was misogynistic. And the fact that the president is saying quiet piggy in the context of this week, I find it mind-boggling.
Martha, you mentioned the Epstein files. With Donald Trump, of course, there is fanfare. He's a man of showbiz. He always knows where the cameras are. The Oval Office, indeed, over the past few months has been part office, part TV set. Interestingly, though, there was no fanfare or exposure visually on Wednesday night when Trump announced on social media that he'd signed the Epstein files into law.
Yeah, I don't think any surprise that he did that on the quiet, and certainly no surprise that, the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein who've pushed so hard for that bill, they weren't there either when it was being signed into law. I think Donald Trump seems genuinely stressed at the moment. I think you can see that in the way he responded to Catherine Lucy, calling her quiet piggy, the way he berated Mary Bruce of ABC when she was asking about the Epstein files. It's hanging over him. And, we knew that this moment was coming. The president only had 10 days to sign it into law before it became law anyway. That's because the House voted nearly unanimously in favour of the files being released. The Senate then quickly approved it as well. But, there's still so many questions about what we're going to see in these files, how they're going to relate to Donald Trump, how damning they're going to be for, individuals and organisations that are connected to Epstein.
Trump's signature means the Department of Justice, it now has 30 days to compile and release all of the Jeffrey Epstein files. That includes thousands upon thousands of documents about Epstein and co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell's life, investments, associates, flight logs, and much, much more. Documentation of Epstein's detention and death in 2019, that should also be released.
Yeah, this could all be released at any time on or before December the 19th. What we don't know is just how much detail we're going to get, because the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, she could decide not to release certain information or redact certain names or parts of information or entire files because they relate to ongoing investigations. So it'll be interesting to see, how full and fulsome the detail is when it arrives. When he's not been busy scribbling on Truth Social over the past 24 hours, Donald Trump has been busy in his mission to bring about world peace in his mind. The US is working with Russia. Together, they've drafted a plan to end the war in Ukraine. This is a 28-point peace plan, and Axios, which is one of the main news sites here in the US, they've managed to get sight of this plan. And according to what has been reported, Ukraine would have to cede some of the eastern part of the country, as well as agree to join NATO and limit the size of its military. In return, should the Russians invade Ukrainian territory again, there would be a coordinated military response. It's not clear, though, what that would be and whether it would involve the Americans. Steve Witkoff, who is Trump's main man in the Middle East and in Ukraine, his main peace broker, he seems to believe that the plan will, in his words, help reinvigorate diplomacy.
The office of President Zelensky, they're saying that he expects to discuss the proposal with Donald Trump in the coming days. US officials are calling it a live document, that it can still be changed, but they have said the plans were drawn up in collaboration with one of Zelensky's senior administration members. They're saying the Ukrainians have agreed to the majority of the plan. Nonetheless, Martha, I think, make no mistake, Zelensky doesn't share the US vision. He will want FaceTime with Trump to rein him in. Caroline Levitt, she was saying that both sides were being consulted, but this draft agreement, it's got Moscow's fingerprints all over it. It resembles the capitulation that Kyiv has long warned against, and that's certainly the view of European allies. It dresses up Russian demands as a peace proposal, demands that Moscow was first making at its high watermark of its invasion in 2022. I think not for the first time. Zelensky, he finds himself with the challenge of pulling Trump back from what looks very much like a shift back towards Vladimir Putin. Zelensky has posted on X that Ukraine needs a peace that respects our independence, sovereignty, and dignity. That chimes with polite but firm rejection that we've had from Ukrainians at different levels in the past 24 hours. Essentially, the message from Kyiv appears to be everything short of run along or something a bit stronger.
I feel like I've seen this dance so many times
Yeah.
where Trump, first has a discussion with Putin, or one of Trump's lieutenants has a discussion with one of Putin's lieutenants, and then they come forward with this plan, and then Zelensky has to find a polite way of rejecting this plan, and then they go back again, and then it, so on and so forth. Is this different? Who knows?
Yeah, it won't have gone unnoticed, I think, in the White House that Zelensky's government is caught up in a corruption scandal. That, for him, is a vulnerability which I think, in turn, will feed the suspicion that this is a US president who will exploit opportunities to strike a deal for a deal's sake rather than for a fair and lasting peace. Now, Martha, we're going to talk about Zoran Mamdani going to the White House on Friday. He's going to meet Donald Trump. Where were you this morning? The White House?
I've been to the White House as well, so it happens. And you thought you were the only ones who went to the White House in DC. There's a Pilates studio at the end of my street, which is called the White House.
Proper gymnastics as opposed to the political gymnastics we get. Boom, boom.
Ba-dum-bum.
Yeah, so Zoran Mamdani, New York mayor-elect. What team does he support again, Martha?
Oh, I know this one, Arsenal.
Yeah, Arsenal, yeah, as he never tires of telling us. He's meeting Donald Trump. The old king of New York will welcome the new to the White House. Although welcome actually is maybe the wrong word. Have a listen to Caroline Levitt.
Tomorrow, we have a communist coming to the White House because that's who the Democrat Party elected as the mayor of the largest city in the country.
I can just see it at the Gatehouse now, Martha. There's a working class person here to see the president. What would you like done with him? But yeah, he'll be there. Democratic Socialist, of course, Zoran Mamdani. We've had the pre-match trash talk. Mamdani, he says he's not concerned. He's reiterated that...
You're sticking with this metaphor, aren't you?
Yes, it's an extended metaphor, Martha. I'll see you on the other side. But listen, he's making the point. He scored with New Yorkers by doing a Trump, promising to lower the cost of living. So it's a kind of mini-Trump, anti-Trump. Now he's going to meet the actual Trump. Bear in mind, there's a lot of talk that Mamdani is the man who's found the secret ingredient for a Democrat fight back. Do we get a taste of that contest? And how might it shape up, I wonder? Will we see a Zelensky-style showdown? And how does Trump handle that, given that Mamdani will surely be prepared for it? I think the dynamic, Martha, will be fascinating. Who wins? Who's weakened?
We'll be back next week to reflect on that Mamdani-Trump meeting, unless, of course, there's major breaking news before that, in which case we'll rush in and have everything you need to know in your podcast feeds.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for listening and for watching. Do send us your thoughts and questions. Send us a review, if you like, to Trump100 at sky.uk as ever. Many thanks. Bye-bye.
See you soon.